On the cold night of January 28, 1457, the walls of Pembroke Castle echoed with the cries of a 13-year-old girl. In an era where medicine was almost non-existent, Margaret Beaufort's chances of surviving childbirth were slim. Yet, a miracle occurred. She gave birth to a healthy boy who would one day change the world forever. By that time, Margaret had already been a widow for 2 months. Her husband had passed away from a sudden illness while she was 7 months pregnant. How did this fragile teenager find the strength and the unshakable faith that her son would become king, even though his claim to the throne was incredibly weak? Before we reveal her master plan, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. We dissect history like no one else. It all started with the tangled past of her family. Margaret belonged to the House of Beaufort, descendants of Prince John of Gaunt. The problem was that their line began from a relationship with a woman of non-noble birth. Although the children were later declared legitimate, they were officially barred from ever claiming the English crown. Margaret grew up with the sting of this exclusion, feeling both exceptional and vulnerable. She was the sole heir to the massive fortune of her father, a renowned commander whose life ended abruptly and tragically. From a very young age, this little girl became a key piece in a political game, a valuable prize for nobles hungry for power. But those who saw her as a mere pawn had no idea they were looking at a future grandmaster, willing to wait decades for one decisive move. The roots of this intrigue go back to Margaret's grandfather. Prince John of Gaunt, son of King Edward III, had a long-standing affair with his lover, Catherine Swynford. Catherine was not a high-ranking noble. She was the daughter of a simple knight, which caused a scandal at court. From this union, 4 children were born and given the surname Beaufort. Later, when the prince and Catherine finally married, the church and the monarch recognized their children as legitimate. However, there was a critical catch. The Beauforts and their descendants were officially forbidden from claiming the English throne. Margaret grew up with the heavy label of second-rate nobility. She watched her family being pushed aside in the struggle for power, despite their direct royal bloodline. This injustice ignited a fire of ambition in the young girl. She realized that her heritage was both a curse and a key to greatness, if only she played her cards right. But in the brutal world of the 15th century, a woman's personal ambition meant little. She was viewed only as valuable property to be traded for political influence. She became the most desirable bride in England, her fate decided by powerful men who saw a child as a tool to strengthen their positions. But those planning her future forgot to ask Margaret herself, and she was prepared to do whatever it took to save her line. Margaret was too wealthy to belong to herself. At the age of 2, she was betrothed to the son of a powerful duke, but that was just a temporary political arrangement. Her real trial began when she was 12. King Henry VI handed her over to his half-brothers, and Margaret was married off to 24-year-old Edmund Tudor. Legend says the young bride hesitated until she had a vision of an angel after a night of prayer, pointing to Edmund as the right choice. The reality was far from divine. Despite his wife's age and fragile frame, Edmund did not wait for her to physically mature. In those days, early marriages were common, but the consequences were often fatal. For a 13-year-old, motherhood was a traumatic ordeal that permanently left her unable to have more children. Margaret herself barely survived, showing incredible resilience. Her married life was short-lived. While Margaret was still pregnant, her husband was captured by political enemies and soon passed away from a severe illness. She was left completely alone, a child with a baby in her arms, just as England was consumed by its bloodiest conflict, the Wars of the Roses. In a world of chaos where kings were replaced with terrifying speed, Margaret had to learn to survive where weakness meant losing everything. She had to grow up instantly to become a shield for her young son, Henry. Meanwhile, England was sinking into darkness. King Henry VI sat on the throne, a ruler who preferred spiritual reflection to iron-fisted governance. While the king lost his grip on reality, two branches of the same dynasty, the Lancasters and the Yorks, began a ruthless war. Margaret, a Lancaster, was in the eye of the storm. Realizing she couldn't protect her son alone, she made a pragmatic move and married Henry Stafford. This union gave her years of relative peace, but the war never truly stopped. After Stafford passed away, Margaret made her most brilliant move yet. She married Lord Thomas Stanley. This was not a marriage of love, but of pure strategy. Stanley was a master of survival, always knowing exactly when to switch sides. His position allowed Margaret to enter the inner circle of the new Yorkist royal family. She became a trusted companion to Queen Elizabeth Woodville, outwardly playing the role of a pious lady-in-waiting. But beneath the mask of devotion was the sharp mind of a strategist. When Richard III seized power and the rightful heirs disappeared mysteriously within the Tower of London, Margaret knew her moment had come. She began a dangerous secret correspondence with the disgraced Queen Elizabeth Woodville. Two mothers, united by the fear for their children's lives, formed a daring pact. Margaret's son would return from exile and unite the warring roses by marrying Elizabeth's daughter. The first rebellion failed due to a massive storm at sea, and Margaret lost everything: her titles, her lands, and her freedom. By the king's order, she was locked in her own home under her husband's strict supervision. It seemed her game was over, but she continued to spin her web of conspiracy right under the noses of her guards, preparing the ground for the return of her only heir. In August 1485, the years of drama reached their climax at the Battle of Bosworth Field. Richard III fought with the desperate courage of a lion, personally leading a charge to take down his rival. But the outcome of the battle depended not just on the bravery of soldiers, but on the will of one woman waiting for news far from the front lines. Thomas Stanley, Margaret's husband, waited on a hill for a long time, refusing to join the fight until the scales began to tip. It is believed that Margaret's influence and persistence were what finally pushed the cautious lord to strike at the king's flank at the critical moment. When Richard fell in the heat of the battle, marking the end of an era, his golden crown was reportedly found in a hawthorn bush. Thomas Stanley picked up the crown and placed it on the head of his stepson, proclaiming him King Henry VII. The 13-year-old widow who had once fought for her life in Pembroke Castle had finally fulfilled her destiny. Her son, who had no direct right to power, was now the legitimate monarch. But those who thought Margaret would fade into the background were mistaken. She had no intention of being just the king's mother. Her real role in ruling England was only just beginning. She would prove to be a powerful force behind the throne, guiding the fate of the kingdom with her iron will. As the mother of the king, Margaret reached the peak of her power. Although she never technically held the title of a reigning queen, her actual influence over the state was absolute. She began signing her name in a unique way, using a Latin letter that signified royal status, and she personally set the strict rules of conduct for the court. At the same time, she remained deeply committed to education, directing huge sums of money to universities and the poor. The memory of what she suffered at age 12 never left her. When her granddaughter was planned to be married off at too young an age, Margaret fought it fiercely, remembering the risks to health and life. She built the solid foundation of the Tudor dynasty, which would later give the world legendary rulers like Henry VIII and Elizabeth I. The story of Margaret Beaufort is a true lesson in patience and strategy. She proved that it doesn't matter how weak your position is at the start. What matters is how skillfully you place your pieces on the chessboard of fate, and how much you believe in your goal despite any obstacle. If you enjoyed the story of this incredible woman, be sure to watch the 2 other videos appearing on the screen right now. There are even more fascinating intrigues and secret pages of the past waiting for you. This was Eva Carter. See you in the next video!